Miami, Florida. The Dadeland restaurant was full. Tuesday afternoon, July 23, 1974. More than 50 diners enjoying a late lunch, the air conditioning struggling against the stifling heat of Miami's summer. Conversations in Spanish and English blending into the kind of scene that made Miami simultaneously the most cosmopolitan and most dangerous city in the United States. The clatter of plates, the aroma of Cuban food, and no one paying particular attention to the table near the window where Griselda Blanco sat alone, smoking a cigarette and reviewing a notebook with the quiet intensity that characterized everything Griselda did. No one noticed, that is, until her youngest son, Michael Corleone Blanco, barely 11 years old, came running into the restaurant, his face pale with terror, tears streaming down his cheeks, and began to shout, not speak, to shout loud enough for all the diners to stop eating and turn to look. "Mom, Mom, Uncle Paco is going to kill you. I heard everything. He and the other men are planning to kill you tonight. They said you've become too dangerous, that the police are watching you too closely, that they're going to turn you over to the feds or kill you themselves. Mom, you have to leave right now." The entire restaurant fell silent. 50 people stopped talking, stopped moving, stopped breathing, because Griselda Blanco's son, the most dangerous woman in Miami's drug trade, the operator who controlled 80% of the cocaine entering the East Coast, was publicly revealing a murder conspiracy against his own mother. Griselda did not stand up immediately, did not shout, did not make any threatening gesture. She simply looked at her son with eyes that showed no surprise, only a cold assessment of the information she had just received, and waited for Michael to finish speaking. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. The people at nearby tables were staring, horrified and fascinated, witnessing this impossible revelation from a child who had just signed the death sentence of several men with a single warning. And then Griselda Blanco spoke. Her voice was so calm that people had to strain to hear it, so composed that it seemed completely disconnected from the betrayal her son had just revealed. So cold that several witnesses later described it as the most terrifying thing they had heard because it contained no warmth, no emotion, only a statement of fact pronounced with the certainty of a judge delivering a sentence. "Michael, go to the car and wait for me there. Don't get out for any reason. Mom has work to do. The men who plan to betray me have until midnight to pray. After that, each one of them dies. Not arrested, not beaten, dead. Paco, Hernan, Julio, all those who were in that meeting, all dead before dawn." Griselda stood up slowly, left a $20 bill on the table, took her son's hand, and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for her as if she were contagious, as if being near her was dangerous now that she had just pronounced death sentences against her own associates. Griselda walked to her black Cadillac, settled Michael in the back seat, and disappeared into the streets of Miami. To understand what happened next, to comprehend how 6 men died in less than 8 hours with such precision that it would reshape Miami's criminal landscape for the next 3 decades, one must understand what was going through Griselda Blanco's mind as she drove through Miami that July afternoon. Griselda was not surprised by Paco's betrayal. She had known for weeks that Paco Sepulveda, her trusted partner for 5 years, resented her. That Paco believed women should not run drug trafficking operations. That Paco thought taking control of Griselda's organization would be as simple as showing up with enough guns and enough money to bribe her Colombian contacts. Griselda had been watching Paco's campaign for 6 months. She had seen how he recruited men loyal to him instead of to her. She had seen how he diverted money from shipments to build his own war chest. She had seen how he secretly met with other lieutenants, planting seeds of doubt about Griselda's leadership, suggesting that a woman could not maintain control when federal pressure increased, insinuating that the Colombians would never truly respect a female operator. But Griselda had also been watching Paco make mistakes, big mistakes, strategic errors that revealed fundamental misunderstandings about how power really worked in drug trafficking, about what made women dangerous in this business, about the difference between controlling territory through fear and truly maintaining long-term control through absolute loyalty and calculated brutality. Paco's biggest mistake was assuming Griselda was vulnerable because she was a woman. He did not understand that Griselda had risen to power precisely because she was more ruthless, smarter, and more strategic than any man in Miami. That she had killed her first husband with her own hands. That she had personally executed 3 DEA informants. That her reputation for extreme violence was not exaggeration, but documented reality in dozens of corpses that had made the mistake of underestimating her. Paco's second mistake was involving other men in his conspiracy. Every person who knew the plan was a potential point of failure, a mouth that could talk, a witness who could reveal everything. And Paco had been so arrogant, so sure that Griselda would discover nothing, that he had discussed the plan openly in a house where Griselda's 11-year-old son was playing in the next room, assuming a child would not understand or care enough to warn his mother. But Paco's greatest mistake, the fatal error that would cost him his life and the lives of 5 other men, was not understanding the relationship between Griselda and her sons. Michael Corleone Blanco, named after the character from The Godfather, was not just Griselda's youngest son. He was her confidant, her protégé, the child she was training to eventually take control of the empire she had built. Michael had grown up in drug traffickers' meetings, had seen executions, had learned from the age of 6 that family loyalty was absolute and that betrayal was paid for in blood. When Michael overheard Paco and the other men planning to kill his mother, he did not hesitate for a second. He ran out of the house, took a taxi to the restaurant where he knew his mother would be, and told her everything. The response Griselda conceived while driving that afternoon had 3 essential elements. First, absolute speed. Griselda would not wait for Paco to make his move. She would not give him time to prepare or realize that his plan had been discovered. She would strike immediately, that same night, before Paco and his conspirators could meet to carry out their coup. This would serve 2 purposes. It would eliminate the threat before it could materialize, and it would demonstrate to the entire organization that Griselda had eyes and ears everywhere, that nothing escaped her attention, that conspiring against her was guaranteed suicide. Second, systematic elimination of all the conspirators. Griselda would not kill just Paco. That would leave the other conspirators alive to attempt revenge or continue causing problems. Instead, Griselda would kill the 6 men who had been in that meeting. She would kill them brutally. She would kill them publicly. She would kill them in ways that made it absolutely clear why they were dying. Killing those 6 men, killing them in a single night, killing them with messages that explained exactly what they had done wrong, and Griselda's entire organization would understand that betrayal was not just punished, but completely exterminated. Third, sending a message that would last beyond this immediate conflict. This could not be just about eliminating a specific threat. This had to be about establishing a principle that would govern future interactions within her organization. That betraying Griselda Blanco, conspiring against her, assuming that being a woman made her weak or vulnerable, all of that would carry severe and immediate consequences. The message had to be clear enough that future employees would think very carefully before even considering the possibility of betrayal, that they would understand that Griselda's gender was not a weakness, but that her brutality was absolute. Griselda arrived at her mansion in Coral Gables around 3 in the afternoon on Tuesday. She wasted no time. Instead, she spent the next 2 hours meeting with her most trusted hitmen, men who had worked with her for years, who had proven their loyalty by killing for her dozens of times, who would follow orders without asking questions, and who would keep secrets even under torture. Griselda gave these men a list of 6 names. 6 of the conspirators who had planned to kill her, the lieutenants, the hitmen, the operators who had been in that meeting discussing her murder, the people whose deaths would send the strongest possible message without requiring an impossible assault against her entire organization. Griselda's instructions were precise. These 6 men die tonight, all before dawn, in the order of the list. Kill them however you want, but make sure each death is discovered quickly, and make sure each body has a note explaining why they died. Start with Paco tonight at 8. He is the leader, operates from his house in Hialeah, usually alone after 7 at night. Take him in his own house. Torture him somewhere private so he understands why he is dying. Then leave the body where it will be found tomorrow morning. Put a note that says, "Traitors die first. Griselda Blanco does not forgive." Then take the next on the list. Continue until all 6 are dead. One of Griselda's hitmen asked the obvious question. "Griselda, if we kill 6 of our own men, the organization might become unstable. Some might think you're being paranoid, that you're killing people without enough reason. How do we maintain loyalty after this?" Griselda smiled, a cold smile that did not reach her eyes. Loyalty is maintained through fear and respect. After tonight, everyone in the organization will know 2 things. First, that they cannot hide anything from me. My own 11-year-old son warned me about this conspiracy. If a child can discover their plans, imagine what I can discover. Second, that betrayal does not lead to negotiation or second chances. It leads to immediate and brutal death. Those 6 men thought they could conspire against me because I am a woman. They thought being men gave them some advantage. Their corpses will teach everyone else that gender does not matter in this business. Only who is more ruthless matters. And no one, absolutely no one, is more ruthless than me. By 5 in the afternoon on Tuesday, Griselda's team had finalized the plan. Each of the 6 targets had been assigned to specific hitmen. Surveillance had been organized to track the targets' movements and identify when they would be most vulnerable. Equipment had been gathered: weapons, cars, safe houses where torture could be conducted without neighbors hearing the screams. Everything was ready. At 6 in the afternoon, Griselda called an emergency meeting of her entire organization for 10 in the morning on Wednesday. The message sent to all operators, distributors, and hitmen was simple: mandatory meeting tomorrow, attendance not optional. Griselda has an important announcement. This message would serve multiple purposes. It would keep everyone at home that night awaiting instructions, make the conspirators feel secure thinking they had until tomorrow to act, and create an audience for when Griselda revealed what had happened to the traitors. At 8:07 in the evening on Tuesday, the body of Paco Sepulveda was discovered in the trunk of his own Cadillac, parked in front of a popular nightclub in Hialeah. Paco Sepulveda, 42 years old, had been one of Griselda's most effective lieutenants for 5 years. He was known for being tough and reliable, had personally executed several informants, was generally considered one of the key people making Griselda's operation in Miami successful. Paco had been at his house around 7 in the evening, reviewing plans for the coup he planned to execute against Griselda on Thursday. Paco never got to execute that coup. Around 7:15 in the evening on Tuesday, while Griselda was quietly dining with Michael at her mansion, 3 of her hitmen intercepted Paco as he left his house to meet another conspirator. They forced him into a van at gunpoint, drove him to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Miami, a building the Griselda organization controlled, a place where the walls were thick enough that screams would not reach neighboring buildings. What happened in that warehouse over the next 30 minutes was designed not just to kill Paco, but to send a message through his corpse about what happens to people who betray Griselda Blanco. They started with his hands, used a hammer to systematically break each finger, crushing the bone slowly while Paco screamed and begged, trying to explain that he was only trying to protect the organization, that he thought Griselda was attracting too much federal attention, that he was sorry. But Griselda's hitmen were not interested in apologies. They worked methodically, breaking each finger individually, making sure Paco felt every impact, making sure he understood that this pain was the direct consequence of conspiring against the woman who had given him power and wealth. Then they moved to his face, beat him with fists and small clubs, breaking his nose and jaw, knocking out teeth, closing his eyes with swelling, making sure that when the body was found, it would be obvious that Paco had suffered extensively before dying. Between the blows, they asked him questions. Do you know why this is happening to you, Paco? Do you know what mistake you made? You thought you could conspire against Griselda because she is a woman. You thought being a man made you superior. You were wrong, and now you pay for your arrogance. Paco tried to negotiate. He offered to resign immediately, offered to give them information about other conspirators, offered money and cooperation, and anything else he could think of that might make them stop. But the men torturing him were not interested in negotiating. This was not about obtaining information or making deals. This was about killing Paco in a way that would terrorize the other 5 people on Griselda's list, that would send a message to the entire organization about the cost of betrayal. At 8:07 in the evening on Tuesday, the nightclub manager found the Cadillac, opened the trunk to see why liquid was dripping, discovered Paco's corpse, and immediately began screaming for help. The police arrived, removed Paco's body from the trunk, saw the extent of the wounds, read the note, and immediately understood that they were witnessing the beginning of an internal purge rather than an isolated murder. The message on the note was clear. More people were going to die that night, all for betrayal against Griselda Blanco. At 9:43 in the evening on Tuesday, the body of Hernan Jimenez was found in an alley behind a restaurant in Little Havana, shot once in the back of the head execution style. The note pinned to his body: 2 dead, 4 more tonight. Betrayal is not forgiven. At 11:18 in the evening, Julio Mendoza was found in his apartment, stabbed 17 times with an ice pick, murdered in the same methodical torture style that had characterized Paco's death. The note: 3 dead, 3 more before dawn. Griselda Blanco always knows. At 12:52 in the early morning of Wednesday, technically already Wednesday morning, Roberto El Gordo Martinez was found in his car, strangled with piano wire, his eyes open in permanent terror. The note: 4 dead, 2 remain. Never betray a woman more dangerous than any man. At 2:37 in the morning, Carlos Vega was found floating in a canal, his body showing signs of extensive torture before being drowned. The note, inside a sealed plastic bag to protect it from the water. 5 dead, 1 more, almost done. The final execution came at 4:15 in the morning on Wednesday. Diego El Flaco Ramirez, the last conspirator on Griselda's list, had spent the entire night hiding in a cheap motel on the outskirts of Miami, protected by 2 armed bodyguards, terrified after hearing about the other 5 deaths. But at 4 in the morning, a woman knocked on the motel door, claiming to be a prostitute that the manager had sent as a courtesy. When one of the bodyguards opened the door, she threw acid in his face. The man began screaming. The second bodyguard ran to the door and was immediately shot by 2 hitmen waiting in the parking lot. Diego tried to escape through the bathroom window, but was captured before he could fully get out, dragged back into the room, and executed with a single shot to the forehead. When the police arrived at the motel and recovered Diego's body, they found a note pinned to his chest. 6 dead in 8 hours. All traitors eliminated. Griselda Blanco does not forgive. Griselda Blanco does not forget. Never conspire against the Queen of Miami. At 10 in the morning on Wednesday, July 24, 1974, Griselda Blanco entered the meeting of her organization in a warehouse in Wynwood. More than 60 people were present. All her operators, distributors, hitmen, accountants, everyone who worked for her. The silence in the warehouse was absolute. Everyone had heard about the 6 deaths. Everyone knew that Paco and the others had conspired against Griselda. Everyone was terrified, wondering if they too were on some list, if they had done something Griselda might interpret as disloyalty. Griselda walked to the front of the warehouse, Michael by her side, and spoke. Her voice was calm but carried perfectly in the silent space. Last night 6 men died. They died because they committed the worst possible crime in this organization. They betrayed me. They planned to kill me. They planned to take control of everything I have built. They thought that because I am a woman, they could conspire against me without consequences. They were wrong. My son, this 11-year-old child, warned me about their conspiracy, and in less than 8 hours, all the traitors were dead. Let me be absolutely clear about how this organization works. I am the leader, not because I am a man or a woman, because I am smarter, more ruthless, and more effective than any of you. If you have a problem with me, if you think you can do better, you can leave right now. No one will stop you. But if you choose to stay, if you choose to work for me, then your loyalty must be absolute. I will not tolerate betrayal. I will not tolerate conspiracy. I will not tolerate even the consideration of working against me. The consequences are what you saw last night. Swift and brutal death. Griselda paused, letting her words sink in. Some of you may be wondering how I knew about the conspiracy. You may be wondering if I have informants among you. The answer is simple. I have eyes and ears everywhere. I have loyalty from people you would never expect. And I have the will to do whatever is necessary to protect what I have built. Remember this. Remember the 6 corpses from last night. And never, never betray me. The meeting ended. The 60 people left the warehouse in silence, each one processing what they had heard. Each one understanding that working for Griselda Blanco meant absolute loyalty or guaranteed death. The story spread throughout Miami's criminal underworld, retold in every nightclub and safe house and drug traffickers meeting. Griselda Blanco had discovered a conspiracy against her, and in less than 8 hours, 6 men were dead, executed with such precision and brutality that no one questioned her leadership again for the next 10 years. The lesson lasted not just years, but decades. The drug traffickers who worked with Griselda after 1974 were careful with loyalty, careful with conspiracies, careful about assuming that being a woman made her vulnerable, because everyone remembered what happened when 6 men forgot that Griselda Blanco was the most dangerous person in Miami, when they assumed that gender mattered more than the ability to kill without hesitation. Michael Corleone Blanco, the 11-year-old boy who had saved his mother's life with his warning, grew up to become one of the most effective operators in Griselda's organization. When reporters years later asked him about that night in July 1974, Michael's answer was simple. My mother taught me that family loyalty is the most important thing. When I heard those men planning to kill her, I didn't hesitate for a second. I ran to warn her. And she did what she had to do. 6 men died that night, but hundreds of others lived because they learned the lesson. Never betray Griselda Blanco. Never assume that being a woman makes her weak. And never forget that in this business, the most ruthless person always wins. And no one, absolutely no one, was more ruthless than my mother. Griselda Blanco continued controlling cocaine trafficking in Miami for the next 15 years, built an empire that generated $2 billion annually, and became a legend, not just because she had eliminated a conspiracy in a single night, but because she had established a principle that would govern criminal interactions for decades. Gender does not matter in drug trafficking. Only who is willing to do whatever is necessary to maintain power matters. And Griselda Blanco was always willing to do what was necessary. 6 bodies in 8 hours. A message written in blood that Miami's underworld never forgot. The Queen of Miami had spoken, and everyone listened.